Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Dan McCormick, the host of the Greatest Salesman podcast. It's episode 18. It's Wisdom Wednesday. It's 2 p.m. Pacific time. I have an unbelievable guest on the show here today, as we do each and every week. The greatest salespeople in the world get a chance to join us and share with us their dive into the world of sales, self-help, business. They just enlighten us in so many ways. And if you're new, we encourage you to comment throughout the show. Ask questions, tell us where you are, if you're a first timer, all of those kinds of things. I mean, there are just blowing up in comments right now. I can see our producer's going to have their hands full. And he's Ricky Villanueva from Utah. Ricky, how are you today?
Hey man, I am wonderful. I am lucky. I am blessed. I was a little sick a week ago, and so I'm feeling good today. So I'm grateful for my health for sure. I'm good.
Yes. Yeah, you look fabulous. You're energized. You got beautiful people joining us. I've got Troy out in Chicago, and there's Pam and lots of friends. If you're new to the show and you have not been to thegreatestsalesman.com, that's our website that houses all of the podcasts. You can like the show. You can comment on the show. You can rate the show. If you're live with us on Facebook or YouTube, you can share the show to your page. And we are just going to have some amazing bombs drop here today on how Ricky became the greatest salesman in the world. He's in the hot seat today. So, Ricky, like we do every week, people are there's Jessica. Who's this amazing Jessica Villanueva?
That's the secret sauce right there.
Secret sauce. That's fantastic. So what I want to do, what I love to do, is have our listeners around the world, whether they're listening live or it's 6 weeks, 6 months, 6 years from now on the podcast, I wonder if you wouldn't share with us 3 things that you think put you in this chair. What are 3 things that have shaped your life or each and every day of your life?
Yeah, first of all, thanks for having me, Dan. I've looked up to you for many, many years. Just so you all know, I found Dan McCormick on YouTube one day, and he shared 2 books. And when he shared those 2 books, I went on and I got him, The Greatest Salesman in the World and Lessons of Great Lives. So it's just been incredible to now be on your show. So thank you so much. The 3 things that have shaped me, I think first and foremost is God. I think that like a lot of us, but for me, it's like in my darkest moments in life, man, where I just felt like there's no one else I can turn to, or there's answers that I don't have, or questions that I don't have answers to, or I don't know exactly what to do in a particular situation. It's always those conversations that I have with God. Back in December, when my business partner and I launched with our current company, that was one of the first things was I remember sitting one morning, early in the morning on a couch. I like to wake up early before my kids wake up and start tackling me and wrestling with me, and it was just one morning, and I felt like there was a lot of internal struggle going on inside me, because here I was again starting a brand new venture. I didn't know who I was going to talk to, and I remember just asking God to bring me some leaders. I remember asking God for help, and He brought me exactly what I needed. And so God, first and foremost, that's my partner, my business partner, my everything. Number 2, I would say is my wife. Like my wife is my present and my future. You know what I mean? It's like we're married, we're together for all eternity, forever, and she's just the driving factor behind everything that I do. I wouldn't be here without her, and I think that drives me a lot. I think for any man that wants to take care of his woman or his significant other, man, and so I take a lot of pride in that, and saying, hey, I can provide anything that you want in life, and so that's number 2. And number 3 is my kids, for sure. Like my favorite thing in the world is being a dad. I identify with being a dad so much. There's no greater joy for me than to play with my kids, for having boys night with my boys, girls night with my girls, having tea party. I think I've had hundreds of tea parties in the last 4 or 5 years. And my kids, they know they've grown up on my lap. Me being a part of this industry, they hold me accountable, especially as they get a little bit older. They see, the company that I'm a part of. They see the goals that I have written down, and so it almost puts a little bit more pressure on my end to make sure that I'm not just creating dreams, but I'm also bringing those to reality. And so my kids are the 3rd thing that drive me. So God, wife, and kids.
Wow. I think anyone that's listening, and there are a lot of people listening right now, can relate to that. And I think that one of the things that brings out people to the chair you're in today, being the greatest salesman, is the fact that Og wrote in a way that brought in faith, that brought in, one of his books, The God Memorandum, and he talks about, the Christ Commission. He has so many amazing books. But today we're talking about specifically that one book that got into your hand, The Greatest Salesman in the World. It's an amazing story. And you also talk about your wife, and we all marry up. I mean, us guys in the world, I mean, what our wives do or whatnot is beyond reproach from my
100%.
perspective. And interesting that you said kids, because Stephen Covey, who my wife had as a professor at BYU many years ago, when he wrote The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, he was fond of saying that when you're raising your kids, you're raising your grandkids. So there's that begin with the end in mind thing, and that's three things that I find to be very fascinating. So thank you. I love writing and taking notes each and every week on that. Okay, so we have a platform for you on three things that you find shape your life. I can feel that you're aligned with that. When and where did you feel like the personal development journey started for you? When did you start diving deep into that area of life?
I started diving deep into that when I was 23 years of age, and I met a couple of very successful networkers in the industry that I reached out to, and I remember just coming to them and saying, "Look, guys, I don't know how to build these things. I have no idea what I'm doing, but I know that I'm hungry and I'm willing to learn. And you guys tell me what to do, and I'll do it. Like, I don't care. Tell me what to do." And I remember starting off with a lot of frustration because I was expecting them to teach me, hey, this is how you recruit. Hey, this is how you get customers. Hey, this is, the how-tos, and instead, I remember them asking me one question, and the question was like, hey, tell us a little bit about your past. And I remember diving into my past, my lack of self-esteem and my history, and a lot of things that kind of shaped who I was. And more importantly, that, kind of blinded me from who I could become. And they said, man, you know what? You need help. You need to create a brand new story about yourself. And I said, well, how do you do that? And I remember them just giving me a few exercises. Write down the person that you want to become. How do you see your business growing? Write it all down. Obsess over it. Visualize. Read the books. They turned me on to Bob Proctor. And I just became obsessed with that because for once in my life, I felt like I had control over my future, right? Like I didn't know about personal development. And so when I got introduced to personal development, I'm like, wow, so that I'm in charge of that. Like my team's not in charge of that. Like I can read as much as I choose to. I can visualize as much as I choose to. I can goal set, dream as much as I want to. That's on me. And I became obsessed, man. I went on a journey. The journey took a little longer than I wanted it to, but it happened just when it should have, right? And so I went on a lifelong mission at that point. At least it's been like 7 years now. And I just became obsessed. And I was the kind of guy that, like, for example, the greatest salesman in the world, the greatest secret in the world, at least the secret scrolls, it took me a while to dive into it, because the moment I started reading it, and he talks about W. Clement Stone early on, and I'm sitting there thinking, wait, this man used this strategy to earn $400 million. Who is this guy? So I remember going into Google, typing in W. Clement Stone, and then I got turned on to Success with a Positive Mental Attitude. And so then I put this book down. I bought Success with a Positive Mental Attitude. I'm reading it. I find out everything about W. Clement Stone. I'm like, man, this is life-changing. And I'm like, I got to do this. I got to recreate a new program in my subconscious mind. And I just went on a mission on that. I really believe in self-growth, subconscious, creating a new story about yourself.
Wow. I love how you said that. I'm going to pause for a minute, because when you hold up the greatest secret in the world, so I've got the greatest salesman here, but then the secret, for those that aren't familiar with the program, the secret is the journalized version. So Og learned the journalized version from Ben Franklin. He listed early on in his early books his favorite books. And Ben Franklin, the autobiography of Ben Franklin, was, of course, learning the 13 virtues that Ben talked about, and how he studied one of those every week for 64 years, you guys. Talk about showing up with consistency. So when we talk about the greatest salesman, I hope everybody will go get a copy, begin your journey. And you said something that Og says at the beginning of the story with Hafid. The prizes of life are not at the beginning, they're at the end. And it's not said how many steps we're going to get. You said it took a little longer, but it worked out perfectly. It showed up when it was supposed to.
That's right.
So
that's right. And I'll tell you, one of the things actually here, what I used as my bookmark in this book was after I was reading, The Successor of Positive Mental Attitude, and then I keep reading, and I hear about Benjamin Franklin and the 13 Virtues. So I went out and I purchased the book, but I couldn't wait for the book to get there. So I went on to Google, and I'm like, what are these 13 virtues? So I remember printing off the 13 virtues, and then going to Think and Grow Rich and printing off the 17 principles of success, and I condensed it into one list. And I have the list in front of me, where on one side I have my goal sheet, and on the other side I have the virtues, and I have the 17 principles. And so as I would read the scrolls, I would pull this out and I'd work on one of those things. And sometimes, again, it took a lot, man. Like positive mental attitude. I mean, you think you can't just read it. Like when you apply it, I mean, it's a lot of effort, to keep a positive mental attitude in certain situations. But I studied, man. I studied, I read, and I applied, and I made a lot of mistakes along the way, but I just kept going and going and going. I just never quit.
Yeah, that's brilliant. There's a lot of bombs dropped right there. So what I did, because I know you had an incredible experience with this guy right here, I brought out my original copy from the 80s. Okay.
Whoa.
Just this is way back in the day, right? So Bob Proctor, obviously one of my favorites of all time. He says this early on in the book: people don't feel comfortable about money because they have it. They have it because they feel comfortable with it. You've shared before about some difficult times. Bob Proctor showed up at a big, important kind of a crossroads in your life. Why don't you talk about that?
Yeah, I was in a crossroads in my life because you're in the industry long enough, you hear enough stories, and you want it bad enough, but you realize, gosh, where I'm at is not where I want to be. And after being in the industry for, almost 10 years, I'm like, this sucks. I mean, for me, it sucked only because I'm the kind of guy that if I'm going to play, I want to win. And not only do I want to win, but I want to create a name for myself. It's not just about being a part of something. I want to be the thing, And so January came along, it was December, I guess, but it happened in January of last year, 2019. And I called the gentleman and I said, what do I got to do to play bigger? I've been stuck in this level for so long, and I'm not willing to have it take me another 10 years to get here. I want to get here faster. And he said, you need to go to the next Bob Proctor seminar, purchase the most expensive ticket. And I was like, a little bit nervous about that. But it's like, I always say, man, if you're going to ask for advice, you better go apply it when it's given to you. And so when he said that, I got online, and of course, a ticket to attend a Bob Proctor seminar was $2,400. And I didn't have a lot of money back then. And so, and this was just January 2019. And so I texted him, I said, are you sure I got to be at the event? I can't do a virtual event ticket because the virtual is $125. And he's like, no, man. He's like, when it comes down to success, man, the closer you can get to the fire, the more you're going to burn. Right. And so I said, deal, I'll do it. And I paid $2,400. My wife supported that decision. My wife's always been my biggest believer. And so whatever it took, she was willing to do it as well, along with the kids. And we all drove out to California, and I sat down with Bob Proctor, and he asked me a couple of questions. The first question that was an interesting question was, because you read about it all the time, but it's different when you have someone tell you to write it out. He said, write down who are your 5 closest friends. So I wrote them down, big smile on my face. Next question, about how much is their income and what is their occupation? And I wrote it down. And then he asked me the next question, is that, could it be that you're the average of those 5? And I looked at that list, and I was like, oh my gosh. I literally got up, walked out. I called my wife and I said, I need new friends. I need new friends. Like, otherwise, like, I'm going to be stuck on this area. And so I fired my friends, not like I called them and I said, you're fired. I just kind of disassociated myself a little bit. I kind of went into an isolation mode, and I said, okay, how do I get to the next level? And I started to just immerse myself in the idea that, hey, I should have a call with one millionaire every single week for the next 12 months. Maybe that'll help me. Ironically enough, also at the time, Bob Proctor asked me, what is it that you really, really want? And there was an income goal that I wanted. And it's interesting how the universe works, because just a couple of weeks after that, I quit the industry of network marketing, and I started dabbling into different things. And then along the way, I'm having a conversation with a millionaire every single week, and I got a chance to meet a billionaire as well. And they shared with me, hey, the people that are really wealthy in life, not the ones that just try to be cool about it because they make a little here and there, but the real wealthy people in life don't talk about the money they make or the things they buy. They always talk about the amount that they give. you know, and I was like, wow, that's amazing. And here I was reaching out to millionaires that were willing to give me advice, willing to invest into me a little bit. And it's just interesting, man. And so that was my experience with Bob Proctor. And I remember writing down on a gold card, and I carried this gold card with me every single day, and I read it and I visualized it. Even when I quit the industry, I still visualized myself earning 7 figures in the industry, even though I wasn't in it. I just knew something would happen eventually. And it happened exactly when I said it would, which was kind of creepy in itself, you know, but that was my experience last year, 2019.
What a story. You know, one of my favorite comments of all time, I think I may have learned from Jim Rohn and another mentor speaking about the word casual. And we got you in the hot seat here today as the greatest salesman in the world. I'm going to ask my producer to go back and find your wife's comment about being the greatest salesman of the century. But because everything, and maybe we can put that up on the screen, because everything you're talking about here, you can really see an intentional creation of your life, a very intentionally focused effort. And I like the phrase that there's the comment, boom, that's why he's the greatest salesman of the century. And that is why we do the podcast each and every week with the greatest salesman, so you can get inside the mind and know. And I'm going to ask you next about when was it most difficult for you. But what was interesting about what you said here in casual leads to casualties. Jim Rohn taught me that. I think I was on the beaches of Mazatlan or somewhere like that in Mexico. We had a small little millionaire group in the late 80s. Casual effort leads to casual results. And you've got a very intentional approach here. Every single day, I feel like you're feeding your mind at a very, very focused level. There's nothing about it that's casual. It's very intentional. And I love, if I could, because we have so many people joining us for the first time, I just want to put the quick commercial out there. If you're joining us late, he's Ricky Villanueva. I'm Dan McCormick, the podcast host of The Greatest Salesman. We're thrilled every single week. The Og Mandino Company does sponsor our show. It is Og Mandino is my sponsor, but you can see the free test that we'll give you. The assessment actually will assess you in about 15 minutes on whether your thoughts are aligned with the principles that Og is teaching. So if you'll go to habitfinder.com/podcast, habitfinder.com/podcast, 150,000 network marketers have taken this assessment. We know exactly what the high achievers, how they think, not what they think, how they think. And that's what you're going to find out about you. And so hopefully you can go do that today. Ricky, I know you've done that. I know that was a while back. We're going to get you on the phone with Dave Blanchard, the founder of the company, and be able to debrief and break down how that brain works in the Ricky V world. So
yeah, that'll help, because I don't know how my brain works, man. I'm thinking way too much. So I need some help in that area.
Well, that's actually one of the things that we find. We are all of us high achievers are hyper visual. We're very stimulated by the next person we're talking to, the next project we're on. It's a go-go world for us. We don't sleep a lot. Mind over mattress is the first thing of the order at 5 a.m. So that's a great thing. But it's great to have all these people commenting. I mean, they are just blowing up the screens here. So I wonder, because Og had some tough times. Bob Proctor had some tough times. Jim Rohn had tough times. Dan McCormick's had tough times. When do you find was most difficult and challenging for you, and how did you handle it?
I've had multiple hard times. You know, one of the things that Art Williams said that I caught on to early on was, he's like, dang right, it's hard. He's like, and it's supposed to be hard. And the harder it is, the easier and the more money I can make. Right. And I was like, wow, that's crazy. I'm like, so I guess it's supposed to be hard. And I don't know if that's true. Maybe some people have, you know, overnight success stories. Right. But for me, it wasn't that way. I mean, I've had multiple moments in my last 11 years where I've broken down and felt like, wow, I'm a disappointment. Like, because when I was 20 years old and I got started in the industry, I mean, nobody was there to say yes to me. You know, it was all just challenge after challenge. And it was like, why are you dropping out of college? I don't get it. But I just felt like this was going to be my path, you know, and so I didn't quit. But there was so many tough moments. I mean, moments where I couldn't, you know, afford that much food for the family. So I'd have to go donate plasma, and maybe twice a week. And that $50 was enough to buy more mac and cheese for the family for the week, you know, moments in my life. But I think, you know, one of the hardest moments was was last year in November. It was tough, but it was one of those moments of clarity as well, right? I feel like you're led to certain situations in life so you can learn from them as well. And so last year in November, I had $800 left in my bank account. That was it. And I have a mortgage that's $2,000 alone, right? So it's like I have $800 left in my bank account. I have a wife and 4 kids. I'm not sure, Christmas is a few weeks away. I'm not sure how I'm going to cover Christmas. And here I am 10 years into the industry, nothing to show for it. My back's against the wall and I have no idea what I'm going to do, but again, like when we go back to the beginning of the show, when you asked me, what are the 3 things that have shaped your life? It was even more clear at that point, because at that point I had to lean on God a lot more. I had to realize the promises that I'd made to my wife that I hadn't fulfilled on yet. And I could clearly see my kids understanding that I was going from this company to that company to that company. They could see the goals and stuff. And so when I made that commitment back in November, that it was just going to change, my back was against the wall, I was just going to work differently. I was going to think differently. And so the very first thing I did before we launched was I wanted to map out what I was going to achieve, not the how. I didn't know how the heck I was going to do it because there was no proof. I mean, 10 years, if anything, there was proof that it wasn't going to happen, but I wrote it down. I wrote it out. And I said, this is what's going to happen in February. This is what's going to happen in May. And this is what's going to happen in October. And boom, 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 we hit those goals. Right. And my life changed, the last 12 months, but it was like, it was a collection of the last 10 years of all the books I read, all the experiences I had. I finally had a clear understanding of what I wanted to build, how I wanted to do it. And I just mapped it all out and I went to work. And there was not one morning, there was not one night, one day where I wasn't insanely obsessed with closing my eyes in the morning, being grateful for the things that were coming, right? It's one thing to be grateful for what you've got, but can you start to be grateful for the things that you don't have, but that they're going to come to you? And so every single morning I'd close my eyes and I'd say, thank you, God, for all the blessings that are coming into my life. And as I would say that sentence, I would say it over and over and over again. I would visualize the things happening, right? I'd visualize my family in Disney World. I'd visualize all the success that I've ever dreamed of. And then I would just get to work, right? I compress timeframes. I don't think I think in the first 7 days of December, I talked to more people than I'd talked to in 5 years, right? Like I just went crazy. And so I mixed the mindset with the massive action, the massive belief. I didn't let anything knock me off. There was no doubt it was just going to happen. And it was intentional. It was not by accident. It was very intentional.
Wow. So when you're going through that, I've got a lot of thoughts and a lot of follow-up questions for you here. And the comments are just coming in. People are just riveted by this. One of the things you mentioned is I actually had Dave Blanchard and Paul Blanchard on one of my other shows. I actually put it on my personal Facebook page last Saturday. And to be able now, whenever I have one of those down moments, I turn on the podcast and I'm listening to the greatest salespeople in the world every week. I can go for hours during the day and listen to these. And you said in those down moments, how you began to compress time. So now the follow-up of Bob Proctor's book became one of the brilliant things of his book is after he talks about the money consciousness on page 10, early on in the book, he talks about how the reasons wealthy people have money is they have developed that state of consciousness that we will hereinafter refer to as the prosperity consciousness. So in those dark times for you, you said you had more reasons to disbelieve over the last 10 years than more evidence to believe. But I'm guessing that prosperity consciousness was something you could feel, something you could touch, something you knew was there if all of the elements came together for your life.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, even resorting back to Think and Grow Rich and the science of getting rich and really magnetizing your brain, right? Like I like that word, just magnetizing your brain to something different, get your blood flowing differently. And I didn't have a good success consciousness. I hadn't magnetized my brain. Like, it's just so interesting, man. The answers are there, right? I've read them. I read them over and over and over. I mean, I've read Think and Grow Rich so many times, but it just wasn't until I made that decision that I was like, I'm going to do it. Like, I am going to magnetize my mind. And in Think and Grow Rich, when he says, when wealth starts to pour into your life. It pours in so much abundance
So fast.
that you wonder where it's been hiding from you your whole life. Man, I look at the last 11 months and I'm like, that's the easiest money I've made. My journey was spending 10 freaking years trying to magnetize my brain with the idea that it was possible for me, you know? And so that was the work that I had to do personally myself. I tell my team all the time, man, if you just wake up in the morning and you just put your hand over your chest and you just start beating on your chest and you start to feel different, you start to visualize your goals. I'm like, your energy level, your vibration goes from here to here. And then when you start prospecting right here, doesn't matter what you say, man, people feel something different and they want to gravitate towards that. So that's what we created back then, was like, we're going to magnetize people. We're going to magnetize our goals. We're going to magnetize a dream. And it happened, man. It's so wild, but it's amazing.
And you're so deserving. And you and I have a very similar story. I started at 19. I finished college in 2 weeks, by the way. I'm not sure how long it took you to finish, but most people call it dropping out. But I said, man, I'm finished. I'm going back to entrepreneurial world. And you know, it's interesting for me. It took 10 years for you. I would say it was 7 years for me to totally trust. You know, there's an element of waiting for things to show up, and you can just trust in the systematic approach of building your business. And I wonder if we go back now to the Greatest Salesman book, or the Greatest Secret for you, was there a scroll that kind of showed up in your life? Is there one of the phrases or scrolls? Because I know you're so well read, and all of the people that are watching you right now can really feel how much work you've done. What scroll just wakes you up and says, wow?
Yeah, there's one scroll. But one of the things that really caught me, again, it was interesting. It took me a while to actually get into the scrolls because I was just so fascinated by like the first few pages, you know? And one of the things that it says this, he's like, as I repeat the words daily, they will soon become a part of my active mind. But more importantly, they will also seep into my other mind, the mysterious source, which never sleeps, which creates my dreams and often makes me act in ways that I do not comprehend, right? Like, when you magnetize your mind to something, I'm telling you, it's almost like you're pulled in directions that you would normally not go or do or say. You're just gravitated towards it as well. That was really powerful to me. And then when it says that W. Clement Stone used this technique on himself to amass a personal and self-made fortune of more than $400 million, I was like, I need to do this, right? So that alone, that page, that paragraph, shifted my whole world. I'm like, if that man did it and he made a fortune of $400 million, I think I can make $1 million at least, right? If I apply this, right? But no, one of the scrolls for me was scroll number 2, which says, I greet this day with love in my heart. I praised my enemies. I thought I love you silently to all I met. And I loved myself enough to protect my body from overindulgence and my mind from evil and despair. It was just a reminder to me, you know, one of my biggest downfalls, one of my biggest mistakes is that I'm really hard on people sometimes. You know, I really am. I just feel like, hey, if you're not vibing with me, whatever, like, I'm going to cross you off, versus just loving more, just loving people where they're at, loving them for who they are. Also the reminder of, and say I love you silently to everyone that you meet. I mean, when I read that scroll, I was literally walking around town just telling people I love them mentally, like, oh, I love you. I love you. Someone would upset me. It's cool. I love you, you know, and it's a good reminder to read now. And then I love myself enough to protect my body from overindulgence and my mind from evil and despair. Like, the mind is just such a powerful thing, but it just goes into so many different ways that if you're not, you know, continually like bringing it back to the things that you want, the things that you dream about, it's easy to start thinking evil. And for me, evil is not so much also like thinking anything like that you want to like commit a crime, but evil is like anything that's just not in alignment with the things that you want. And it's just so easy to fall into those things. So that was a good scroll for me. That was a reminder.
Yeah, that was probably one of the more significant. I've literally echoed those words virtually every day of my life since I was 19. When I first wake up, I will greet this day with love in my heart. Yes. And it wasn't until Dave and Paul showed up and they really taught me what was that love. It's a brotherly love. It's philia. You know, agape is godly love. Eros is romantic love. But you can greet everybody with brotherly love in your heart and really care about them. And it's really a valuable thing. I didn't know you were going to say that, but I always have my cardstock versions of the scrolls out.
Perfect.
And there is nothing so powerful as Og teaching us in scroll 2, because we're coming off of scroll number 1. And if you want to reread scroll number 1 today, for all of our listeners, if you reread scroll number 1, think about Og as an alcoholic facing that pawn shop window, thinking about taking his life. And yet today I begin a new life. And then I will greet this day with love in my heart. He meets none other than W. Clement Stone, as you said. And I got truth bumps just popping out of my arms, just thinking about that meeting. And oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I love it when it talks about shedding your old skin and stuff like that. And when you visually see that, it's like any one of us at any moment, no matter where we're at, we can make that shift in our lives, you guys. And you think just because you make money that you got no problems. There's always problems to solve. And so that's why you continue to do personal development. You continue to move forward. But I think what's most fascinating, and sometimes what's most frustrating, when you're talking to people and you're saying, gosh, like, if you could just get into my mind and understand how simple it can be to just make that shift and start to create a new life about your, like, I wish I could just have everyone get into my mind and say, hey, this is what you got to do. But everyone's got their own journey. I had mine. I learned, and I'm, and I'll tell you, it's like, you got to be grateful for the journey. You got to be grateful for everything happening, because it's literally like your armor that you're being given. Like, every piece that you go through is like a part of your armor that you're going to use to go to war. And so, like, one of the things that I'm most proud of is that, like, if everything went away today and you put me in a different country, I could rebuild it again. Yeah. I wouldn't even have to know how to speak the language. I just know I could rebuild it again. And guess what I would start off with? This, mapping out my mind. What am I going to do? And then I'd do it. It's going to happen. And so that's what I'm most proud of. So as everyone that's watching this, you're on your own personal journey. And I'll tell you, I'll go back to this. I keep going to different things, but one of the things that caught me in this book too was he said this: you are nature's greatest miracle. Yeah. Just to duplicate the computer that you possess called the brain would require sufficient electronic equipment to fill the entire interior of the Empire State Building. Right. And so when you realize how powerful you really are, like, a lot of people will say, man, you're amazing, you're this and you're that. But it's like, so are you. Like, you just don't realize it yet. And when you realize how powerful you are, how incredible your brain is, we're all God's highest form of creation, man, like, it should just give you so much confidence knowing that you can create anything you want in your life.
Oh, man. Okay. You just struck the next chord for the next part of my questioning, because everybody moves forward with two things: belief and confidence. You just said exactly that you could rebuild it again because you have belief and confidence. 12 months ago, you were a little rocky on that, right?
Right.
But now I want to move, because Og, over my shoulder, over this shoulder here, is the trilogy. All of my Og books are right here.
Wow.
And this entire shelf is just Og books, and I got more. But Og had a philosophy for living, a philosophy for writing, a philosophy for teaching, in parable form, in ancient language form even. But he had his system for self-help, but you have a system for building a business. Talk about how you went from zero to hero when you created that systematic approach that everybody could just dive into, because somebody mentioned earlier that success loves speed. And I like that when success loves speed, you can simplify, electrify, and multiply a lot faster. So talk about having a systematic approach, because you've shared with us your approach for personal development. How about for being the greatest salesperson in the world?
Yeah, success loves speed, man. Ricky V loves speed. I'll tell you that. I love speed, man. I love, hey, let's move fast, right? Because I believe that you can make things happen so fast. But I'm a big student of Brian Tracy, right? And he's got an exercise where he says, hey, take out a sheet of paper and write down the top 20 things that you can do today to move your business forward. So you write down 20 things. And then he says, okay, and ask yourself the second question, which is, if you could only do 3 things out of this 20, which are the 3 most important ones? So you circle those 3, you throw away the rest of the 17. And then you ask yourself the third question, which is, well, if you could only do one of those 3 for the next 90 days, which one would it be? And he says, circle that one and only do that obsessively, right? And so for me, that was like everything that I applied back in December was like the teachings of all these amazing people. And that's what it was. See, for 10 years, I spent my time trying to train distributors or trying to come up with more tools, or, hey, here's a brochure. Or, hey, here's a website. Hey, here, I just made the prettiest getting started guide for you. And guess what? It didn't move anything for me, right? And so I remember in December, as we started to grow, I also got a call from Larry Thompson, and as I'm on the phone with him, and I'm like, hey, listen, while I have you on the phone, we should do a training for my team on Sunday. And he said, if you're already training, you're already doing it wrong. And I was like, okay, mind shift. I'm like, let's get back, right? And let's keep working. And so I identify with a few simple things, right? Number one is, my systematic approach to being the greatest salesman in the world is realizing that sales is a numbers game, right? And so when you realize that, for me back in December, there was a few things I was going to do every day. I wasn't going to do it all, and I wasn't going to be the best social media guy or the best attraction marketer. There was a few things that I was going to be in control of every single day. Number one, I was going to reach out to 20 people every single day. Now, you don't have to reach out to 20. You don't have to reach out to 5. It's up to you. You identify the number. Back then, my first week, I talked to more than 400 people, but after that, it was 20 people a day. We had so much momentum happening that there were moments where I'd wake up early, I'd maybe reach out to 7 people, and then I'd be busy on Zooms and calls. Next thing I know, it's midnight. I'm getting ready for bed, and I'm like, shoot, I still have 13 more reach outs. I'd open up the laptop, and I wouldn't go to bed until the full 20 were done every single day. Because it doesn't matter what your team's doing, doesn't matter who ranked up, none of that. What are you doing personally every single day to move your sales forward, to move your recruits forward? And so every single day was my reach outs. Number 2, very simple, follow-ups, right? 80% of the people that join your team that you're going to sell a product to or recruit it into the business, 80% of the people are going to join the 8th or 9th time that you follow up with them. Period, right? Like very rarely, I think it's 2% that actually join right from the beginning. And so one thing that I'm very adamant about is I'm following up. I tell people all the time, when people say, well, when do you stop following up? I'm like, you stop following up when they block you or if they die. That's it. Other than that, you're still following up. Number 3 is I'm making sure that I have 3 new connections, that I'm growing my database every single day, right? How can I have new people to talk to and follow up with if I'm not growing my database every single day? So I lean on Facebook, and I friend request a few people every day. As I build those relationships, I put them all in an Excel sheet. From January of last year to December of last year, I grew a brand new database from scratch of 1,200 new people on social media, right? So there's no excuse to not have people to talk to. And that was it. If I could do those 3 things every day and believe that if those 3 things were done, that I would excel and move forward, then that was it. And I just went at it. And those were the simple systems that we created in the beginning. We created an awesome social media platform where people can grow very fast, effortless. And so it is what the vision was to say, hey, the way you acquire a customer, the way you recruit a distributor, the way you launch a distributor is the same exact way. Our vision was to say, hey, we can take a janitor, we can take a lunch lady, we can take a lawyer and a doctor, and in spare time, we can teach them how to have a fast growing business. And then it just came down to being the example, right? We can't just build the systems and talk about it. We have to go do it. And so my business partner and I and our wives, we just ran, and we didn't look back. We just ran. And even till today, right? When I do Facebook Live, sometimes I'm like, well, what do you want me to talk about? And people will say, we want to tell us how to build a network marketing business. It's always the same thing. Handful of things that make all the difference. And I'm grateful for that, because college only lasted for me a few months as well. I graduated once. My art teacher gave me an F And then I was like, man, that was an expensive class. So I walked away and I joined network marketing for $500, and it was life changing. So I'm not the brightest person in the world. So if you give me 50 things to do, I may not do them, but you give me a handful of things that make all the difference, and I'm going to go to work on those few things, right? Create good habits and become slaves to those habits, right? And you just become a slave to that. And that's what I developed over, and I still do to this day. Now it's not 20 people. Now I'm reaching out to 5 new people a day. I'm making 3 new connections a day, and I'm following up every single day. First thing in the morning, it's still a systematic approach. And those things might take you an hour to do. It doesn't take you 5 hours. It literally in your spare time, you can get it done.
Wow. Hey, he's Ricky V. If you're new to us here on the podcast at The Greatest Salesman, I'm Dan McCormick. I'm the ambassador to the Augmandino Company. We're here to inspire everyone that gets a chance to listen. We're here to dive into the mind a little bit here, because the world is out there ready and willing to beat you down at any moment in time. You mentioned Og in your last little, you quoted him without even saying you quoted him. But you also mentioned Larry Thompson. I met Og's book before I met Larry, but Larry I worked with for many, many years. You said something about training. Now, Larry was one of the greatest trainers in the world, without a doubt. But training doesn't work. Work trains. And you get after it. And you do. And I like the fact that you do. And you just keep doing. But then you refined your personal development approach. You refined your business approach to know what you were going to be recruiting them for. And you had that systematic approach for doing it. Larry taught us in the early days in the millionaire training. For those that don't have this in your library yet, you're going to want to go to Amazon and get millionaire training. You'll see Ricky and Demetrius were featured in the book launch. It's great to have you here to talk about that and all of the things that you've talked about. So I guess there's so much to talk about, because he taught us to talk about 10 people a day. And he was the first one to teach me about speed. And we talked about these 90-day massive action plans. And you just go for 90 days because you can compress so much into a story that leapfrogs you forward. I wonder, in closing, we have so many people that maybe haven't got through those 10 years that you went through yet. What would you share with some of those people that they can taste it, they can see it, maybe they just haven't had the success just yet? What would you say to those people in closing?
I would say, there's so much I could say, but first and foremost, it doesn't have to take you 10 years. It might. It could take you a little less. It could take you a little longer. What I could tell you is it could take you 10 years, or it could take you 10,000 invitations, right? And so what do you want to do faster, right? And so I changed my life because I decided that it wasn't going to take me 5 years to talk to 500 people. I was going to do it in 5 days. The result is going to be the same. But if you want to achieve it in 5 years, great. Or you want to achieve it by next week, Tuesday, that's a whole nother story, right? So you can compress those time frames. I really, really believe in that. Like, you don't got to stay stuck where you're at. And so enjoy the next thing is like, why do you want to compress time frames? Like, when you think about things, you got to also ask yourself, well, what's the purpose behind it apart from money, right? You go talk to 500 people in the next 7 days. Who do you become in that process? Because I get the question all the time, well, what do you say? Does it matter? I can go right now and reach out to 100 people and just say, hey, not sure what you're working on. Are you open to taking a look at something? That's might not be the best invitation in the world, but so what? If I say it to 500 people, if you say it to 500 people, do you think your confidence level is going to be a little bit higher? Do you think your recruiting game is going to go up? Do you think your checks are going to go up? Right? So it's not about just the money. It's about who you're going to become. When Demetrius and I last year, when I'd walked away from the industry and we decided to sell solar, I was back out on the street knocking door to door. But you know what? It didn't matter, because all the skills I developed in network marketing, I applied it out to the traditional business world as well. And I became the top salesman for Demetrius's team in solar fast again. Right. And it was why was it? Because I understood numbers. So I was handing out flyers. I was knocking on doors. I was doing leads. I was whatever it took. We were going to get the job done. Right. And so you can take so much from network marketing and the development of yourself and apply it to so many areas, right? Like Larry Thompson, right? What's that one liner that he says all the time? Like he says, I already forgot, but it basically has to do with it's not about making people do what you want them to do. It's about making them want to do what you want to do, right? And so I remember having a conversation with my daughter back in a couple months ago. My daughter's like, Dad, I want to stay being homeschooled. But I really wanted her to go to school because I could see when we'd go to the park and she'd look at the kids coming out of school that I could see there was something in her eyes. And I remember I said, okay, let me ask you a question. Why is it that you don't want to go to school? Or maybe you do, but you're maybe a little scared. And she says, you know what, Dad, I am a little bit scared. Sometimes I feel like I would want to go to school. I'm like, great. Hey, you don't have to go to school just as long as you admit to yourself that you would like to, and maybe one day you do. And 2 days later, she was enrolled into school. That was her decision that she made on her own. If Larry Thompson had not said that one-liner, I might have taken her to school crying, kicking, whatever. But instead, she went to school excited, right? It was like, everything that you learn here, it's not just to build a business, but it's like, who do you become in the process? Do you become a better spouse? Do you become a better parent? Do you become a better friend? Do you become a better entrepreneur in general? Network marketing has done that for me because of the mentors that I've met, like you, like Og Mandino, W. Clement Stone, Napoleon Hill, Bob Proctor, Les Brown, Brian Tracy, Zig Ziglar, all the people that I've studied for over a decade. They've turned me into the person that I am today. And so get excited about not just the money, but who you're going to become. Compress those time frames and believe that you are nature's greatest miracle, because you really are.
Wow. What a close. Jim Rohn said it best. Don't make $1 million for the money, make $1 million for what it'll make of you. And that's absolutely beautiful. I want to thank everybody for joining. I want to thank Ricky V for being here. I want to thank everybody for sharing and showing up and your comments. And you can go to habitfinder.com/podcast if you want to align those thoughts with the things that you want, the principles that are being taught. Og said in scroll number 9, I will act now. So as we conclude, we're going to let you act now. There's the mic drop. And we're going to go out and have the greatest day of our lives. Thank you so very much, Ricky. I know your life and your organization, your team, your systems demand your time. Thank you for sharing it with so many people here today.
Thank you, Dan. I appreciate it.
Fantastic.
Thanks, everyone.
Everybody. He's Ricky